Howdy mates, how are we all doing? Good noontime. It is Monday, July 5th, 2021, and I'm over at the Cedar Point Environmental Park, which is near the town of Englewood, Florida. However, this particular section that I'm at, it actually meets up with the Lemon Bay Estuary, which is a well-known body of water in this part of the state. However, we're not quite at the Gulf yet. We're close, but not quite. As you can see, even the mangroves beyond, it will eventually lead into the Gulf. But rest assured, we're not quite there yet. And for those of you who are not sure what an estuary is, I explained in a video the other day, an estuary is mostly a body of water that has a mixture of fresh water and salt water. So basically a 2-in-1. But that's not the only thing that I want to explain up here. Pardon for the little pause there, mates. Just had to let a couple of people go onto the observation deck. So yeah, I basically here want to explain some of the seagrasses that we can find here. So the first thing you might notice right down here, there's this little patch. This is your well-known turtle grass. Now exactly in terms of why they call it turtle grass, I don't quite know. But typically the stem of turtle grass is a bit more round. And it's typically a bit more finer too. But then if you go slightly, just a little further out, that's where you see the manatee grass. Kind of reminds you of looking at, I don't know, like a piece of celery, perhaps, as an example. You know, just to compare it with another object. But, you know, manatees, which are very common out here, especially, they like to feed on these seagrasses. And you may be thinking, you know, are seagrasses really the same thing as algae? Not necessarily. I may have said that earlier in the video, I don't quite remember. But yeah, essentially this serves as an excellent nursery habitat for some of our juvenile fishes, even our shrimp and oysters too. So in a way, this nursery can also act as a hiding spot too for some of our smaller creatures as well. So that's the one thing that a project that's been going on here is actually planting the seagrasses over here. Because, you know, if it weren't for our seagrasses, we wouldn't have many of our fish that now reside in the Gulf of Mexico, such as snook, for example. But then, you look behind me, too. We've got ourselves the famous red mangrove. Now, you may be thinking, like, how exactly do you know if you're looking at a red mangrove? Well, for one thing, too, red mangroves are typically the closest to a shore, which is the case since we're right next to a body of water. But not only that, but the red mangroves, they also produce something called seed propagules right here. So what happens is these eventually can break off of the plant, from the plant, excuse me, and they'll basically just go in the water and spread wherever they decide to settle. And what's also quite neat about the plant too is that they kind of have these aerial roots, as you can see right here. And with the oxygen that is going into these roots, they will go into the submerged roots to supply oxygen for the plant itself. And as you can see too, with the roots, you can see a cluster of oysters as well. So they can also be a very important food source for some of our fellow fish homies too. But what's neat is with the red mangrove, you can't even really tell like where the plant really starts, because it just creates this maze of roots. You know what I'm saying? And like, another thing that they can do is they can essentially create their own islands too, because they're able to trap sediment, and that's how they can do such a thing. It's quite remarkable. And if you look at the roots a little bit, it kind of has like a reddish color as well. So that's another way of how you know if you're looking at a red mangrove. But then, that's not the only type of mangrove that we're seeing either. We're also seeing, sometimes if you go slightly further inland, which we are right now, just slightly, we're looking at the famous black mangroves too. See, black mangroves in particular, they actually produce these pneumatophores, which is just a fancy way of saying roots that emerge from underground. And they're usually coated in salt most of the time. So it makes it very easy for them to grow in a saltwater habitat quite easily. It's not a problem for them whatsoever. And typically, black mangrove doesn't really grow quite as tall either. But that's a common distinction as well. But yeah, it's a neat spot over here. And, just taking my time. I'm still essentially learning what is here, really. I'll be honest, I have a main idea of some of the flora that's found here, but I am still learning because, I've been here many times, but now it's like I can revisit as much as I can. So it's gonna be a fun project. So alright, mates, I hope you guys enjoyed learning about that, about what seagrasses provide and what our mangroves can do, in terms of acting as a nursery. And this is a neat spot over in Englewood. So alright, mates, hope you all enjoy your Monday, and Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks.